Hi there, my name's Paul, and this episode is part of our series called Glimpses of Jesus. We're on a journey through the Old Testament, examining the main events and seeing how they point us to Jesus and salvation in him. It's early 800s BC. In Israel, Jehu's pulled off a successful coup, killing Ahab and his family. He's now the king. In the process, he's killed Ahaziah, the king of Judah. Here, our attention is being drawn to Jerusalem, where Ahab's daughter Athaliah is making a play for the throne. It's 2006, and I've been appointed as pastor at Wellington Chapel in Herefordshire. The building's derelict, and it's been condemned. The church is a handful of believers meeting in a small porter cabin on the lawn. That autumn, we renovate the building. The doors open. Job done. Well, no. The real work's just about to begin. The aim isn't a renovated building. We want to see a revitalised church in the village. In 2 Kings 11 and 12, the temple gets restored. The building gets fixed. But there's also a deeper work. The nation of Judah is revitalised, is reformed, and turns back to God. What can we learn from this about being healthy Christians and having healthy churches today? Well, the first lesson, we need Jesus to take the lead. These chapters emphasize godly leadership. First, there's the king. Chapter 11 begins with Athaliah's grab at the throne. Athaliah is the mum of Ahaziah, the murdered king of Judah, and she's the grandmother of the heir to the throne. She's also Ahab's daughter and certainly shares some things in common with him. Athaliah is not concerned about God's king sitting on the throne of God's nation. She wants power for herself. So she kills off the potential heirs one by one, but not baby Joash. He's whisked away and hidden in the temple. When does reformation begin? When does the nation start turning back to God? The trigger is Joash's coronation. 6 years later, Joash is brought out of hiding by Jehoiada the high priest. Athaliah is dealt with, and Joash is crowned king. Reformation follows. The king is key, but so's the high priest. It's Jehoiada who arranges the coronation of Joash. It's Jehoiada who brings the challenge to both king and people to walk with God. Verse 17. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord, the king, and the people, that they would be the Lord's people, and another covenant between the king and the people. Godly leadership is key in the reformation of Judah, and it's key for healthy churches today. We need elders and others with a heart for the Lord and a desire to serve him. But the message of these chapters goes deeper than this. You see, who's the high priest today? Who's the king in God's kingdom? And then another question, who's the prophet? We've seen the importance of that office with Elijah and Elisha. Who's the main prophet to God's people today? There's only one person who fully and completely carries out all these roles. That's Jesus. You see, we don't just need godly leadership. We need Christ's leadership. Jesus is key for true reformation. Jesus is key for true revitalization. Jesus is key for healthy churches. Reformation isn't something we work up from within. No, it comes from God our Father, through Christ his Son, our prophet, priest, and king. If we want healthy churches, churches on fire for God, we need to pray for Christ to be at work. We need to listen to Jesus and let him lead. We need to welcome his interruption in our lives. That can get uncomfortable, especially when he challenges the idols of our hearts. Are we willing to let him lead? So we need Jesus to take the lead. Next, we need to be willing to act. Chapter 11 and verse 17. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord, the king, and the people, that they would be the Lord's people, and another covenant between the king and the people. Now, there's 2 covenants here. The second covenant deals with the relationship of the king and the people. The first is about the relationship of the nation and God. It's a commitment to follow God and walk in his ways. Note though, it's more than words. verse 18. So all the people of the land went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed its altars and images to pieces, and they killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, at the altars. Back in the time of Moses, God had made it clear that his people were not to worship idols. Yet here in Jerusalem is a temple to Baal. If the people want to follow God, that temple needs to be removed and destroyed. A commitment to God requires a cutting away of everything in our lives that no longer fits. We see that in the church at Ephesus almost 900 years later. Acts 19 and verses 18 and 19. And many who had become believers came confessing and disclosing their practices, while many of those who had practiced magic collected their books and burned them in front of everyone. Here's a people that want to live for Jesus. It's not just words, there's action too. Yet there's more going on in Jerusalem. They destroy the idols, they confront the bad, but they also invest in what matters. Joash sees the temple looking dilapidated. He gives the order for the priest to oversee a repair program, but it doesn't materialize. The king picks it up a few years later, and Jehoiada comes up with a plan to collect the money needed and to direct it for the work of repair. Chapter 12 and verse 9. Then the priest Jehoiada took a chest, bored a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar on the right side as one enters the Lord's temple. The priests who guarded the threshold put into the chest all the silver that was brought to the Lord's temple. The people give, and over the years, the temple is renovated. Now, remember, the temple's more than a building. It's a place where people would go to meet with God. It's the place of sacrifice where atonement for sin is enacted, looking forward to the one atoning sacrifice of Jesus. It's the place of prayer and the display of God's presence with his people. Investment in the temple is more than philanthropic support of ancient architecture. It's investment in knowing God and in making him known. The covenant of 2 Kings 11:17 is not just words, it's action. Today, are we ready for that action? First, are we ready to challenge the idols in our lives? Stephen Driscoll's written a book called Made in Our Image. In it, he notes that the average working hours in the UK today are half of what they were in 1870. What are we doing with all this extra time? Here's what he says. Primarily, the extra time released has been fed into the vacation and the television, and more recently into other screens and electronic devices. How much time do we pour into holidays and screens? I know it's not a simple question. Not everything here is bad. My tablet is a tool I use for work and study. I often read the Bible on it too. But there's all kinds of other stuff that I devour, and not all of it's helpful. Rest is good, but how quickly can that holiday become the God we are living for? Are we ready to cut out the stuff in our lives that replaces God, even if it's painful? And what about investing in God's kingdom? That has a cost too. Investing in the kingdom of God means not investing in the world. Giving money to support the local church or mission means not having that money to spend on things you want. Giving time to serve in a ministry or setting aside time to study the Bible and pray means not having that time for other pursuits. That's not easy. But if we want healthy churches on fire for God, if we want to be healthy as disciples of Christ, then we need to be willing to act. What actions do you need to take to walk more closely with Jesus? So we need Jesus to take the lead, and we need to be willing to act. What's the third lesson? We need a change of heart. 2 Kings 12 and verse 2 is a telling verse. Throughout the time the priest Jehoiada instructed him, Joash did what was right in the Lord's sight. Joash did what was right, but only when Jehoiada was around. Why? Because it didn't come from his heart. 2 Chronicles also tells us about the Reformation in Jerusalem and adds this detail. After Jehoiada died, the rulers of Judah came and paid homage to the king. Then the king listened to them, and they abandoned the temple of the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and served the Asherah poles and the idols. As soon as Jehoiada died, Joash changed course and led the nation right back into idolatry. Why? Because serving the Lord wasn't a conviction in his heart. When it fitted, Joash led the people in God's ways. When it was challenged, he readily let it go. What does this teach us? Reform without a change of heart doesn't last. 2 Kings 11 and 12 are full of big actions, but ultimately it doesn't bring real transformation. By the end of chapter 12, Judah's in deep water. The Arameans attack with eyes set on Jerusalem, but they settle for all the treasures of the temple and the palace. It gets worse. Eventually, Joash is assassinated. His reign comes to a sorry end. I remember a firework party I went to when I was younger. There was one firework that was so much bigger than the rest. All night we were looking forward to that one being lit. What would it do? How loud would it be? The match was struck and the flame put to the fuse, and we waited. It fizzled out and did nothing. That's the reality here. So much promise, but it ends with disappointment. What do we need to be healthy Christians? We need changed hearts. Where do we get them? Jesus. Jeremiah is a prophet who lived about 600 years before Jesus was born. He writes this about God's plan of salvation in Jesus. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days, the Lord's declaration. I will put my teaching within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Notice what God says he will do. His teachings, his word, will not just be an external word, but one that he places and writes deep in our hearts. At the heart of the gospel is a change of heart. Are we happy with less? That's an interesting question. If we think of a healthy church, what do we picture? What would satisfy us? A busy church? A full church? A comfortable church where we know we will be loved and cared for? A well-organized church which functions slickly? All of that is possible without a change of heart. Jesus wants to do more. The gospel promises more. If we want truly healthy churches filled with people on fire for God, if we want to be healthy disciples of Christ filled with a passion for his glory and a conviction for his truth, we need God to work in our hearts. What are you looking for in Christianity? Pain relief? There's comfort in knowing Christ and his word, but it's more than that. Are you looking for help when life gets tough? A crutch to lean on? God's as good a crutch as you can find, yet there's more than that. Are you ready to sign up to the kingdom of Jesus, where he takes the lead, where he works in our lives? Are you ready to give everything to follow him? Are you ready for him to change you from the inside out? That's what we need. That's the kind of reformation we need to look for in our lives and in our churches, if we want to live as his people in a way that counts, both now and for eternity.